Questioning user asks, what scientific experiment would you run if money and ethics weren't an issue? Use it 2. Not necessarily a scientific experiment, but a series of experiments to see how you can control nerve sensations from the brain and whether you can create VR that can perfectly mimic the sensation of touch whilst being motionless, as if you're moving and touching something in a virtual world but not in the real world. Is that even possible? And user 3. I'd raise a group of children from birth to adulthood, kinda a Truman Show thing, without any contact with music and see how it affects their lives and personalities. I'd make sure everything else would be normal but music would be edited out of their lives. And user 4. I'd study the long-term effects of low-T on humans by sending a habitat to the moon, and then sending supplies and volunteers, and I'd send a lunar bulldozer to cover the habitat with regulators because I'm not particularly interested in contaminating my results with radiation exposure. And user 5. That Doctor Who episode wherein they bred artificially grown humans, infect them each with all known diseases so that they can develop antibodies cures. And user 6. Of a baby human raised by apes, basically to see if Tarzan's scenario would occur and the human is able to communicate fully with the apes. And user 7. With Elon Musk's Neuralink thing, the first thing I thought of was an unethical experiment. If you attached a whole bunch of wires to the speech center and audio center of the brain of a bunch of children, and network them together, I wonder what kind of language they would develop and how they would communicate with what is essentially telepathy. And user 8. Force compliance on specific diets with a diverse sample of people and a well-regulated control group. Follow for 10+ years. Is veganism really healthy? How about paleo? Should we never be eating gluten or dairy? Edit to add, this has definitely not been done before because there are several problems with this kind of study. You can't force people to comply to a diet, which is the first hurdle. You could have people voluntarily report what they eat, but this isn't a randomized trial and has its own issues, recall issues, compliance, self-selection bias, etc. You're also missing a good control group to compare results to. Then if there is a population that follows a certain diet, say people from the Mediterranean following the Mediterranean diet, you run into the problem of correlation versus causation. There could be something different about their lifestyle that is explaining the health differences besides diet. Same issue as above, no control group. There's also the huge issue of not having a longitude study. Most short-term trials examining diets are just that, short-term. It's hard to ascertain if there are health effects show up 10 or 20 years down the road. Also, people claiming that they know what diets are healthy and unhealthy, I'm sure that's true of some diet types of foods, and research non-experimental data, even with its flaws, can point us in the right direction. I'd feel pretty good saying that eating more vegetables is healthier for the vast majority of people. Eating Doritos is not healthy for the vast majority of people. But there is so much we don't know about optimal nutrition and how different populations react to food. I'd love to see an actual high-quality experiment. Second edit, you can't experiment on prisoners. This seems to be a common question. Even an experiment you feel is benign is unethical. Prisoners are unable to properly consent because they, rightly, feel their liberty is at stake for consenting. They are therefore not able to consent to an experiment, which means you can't run it. Most of the laws and norms that were passed stating this were conceived after World War II when researchers were quite literally concerned about preventing the crimes of the Nazis from taking place again. And, user 9. How would the world react to a mountain of 100 billion pennies for free in the middle of a major area? And, user 10. Dinosaur cloning, what else is there to do? And, user 11. Oh man, I love this question. There are a ton of geoengineering experiments that I'd love to run if they weren't both 1. Illegal, 2. Insanely expensive, 3. Non-zero possibility of death and destruction, iron fertilization, basically dumping tons of iron dust into the ocean to cause an algae bloom, which should sequester a bunch of carbon and help mitigate global warming, cloud seeding, space mirrors, dropping a nuke into a volcano, normal stuff. And, user 12. How athletes from different sports react to fight off light. Even further, would they fight differently than others? And, user 13. Genetic altering of humans. I don't currently have an issue with anyone that wants to do it on themselves, however to do it to an embryo or through the parent's DNA to see what we could do to advance humans would be amazing alterations to intelligence, memory, physical attributes, skills to swim underwater, visual alterations to see the full light spectrum and hearing for the full sound spectrum, immunity to all diseases and harmful bacteria, ability to eat almost anything for sustenance, and, user 14. The Gilligan's Island experiment. Shipwreck 100 people with vastly different backgrounds, wealth disparity, and personalities on a remote island. See what kind of civilization grows from it. Then do it 50 more times to check results against each other. And, user 15, see if a monkey tribe could become dominant over the rest by training them to make and use weapons and other primitive technology. Also interested in seeing if they would take their newfound knowledge and begin to expand an empire. And, user 16, near-death experiences, and what people see. So basically I'd want to kill a bunch of people then bring them back to life. I'm sure a lot of them wouldn't make it back. And, user 17, teach a kid the wrong words for everything and see how long it takes for them to adapt. Another edit. Thanks for the gold. Also, it seems a fair number of people have done this to kids on a very small basis. Seriously, do not do this to anyone on any scale. This post is based on the concept of setting morals aside. This is a massively horrible thing to do. Edit. A few people have commented that this is the same as learning a second language, and I want to address why that is not the case. When you learn a second language, you are assigning a new word that has no previous meaning to you, to a concept that you already know. So you know what an apple is, and you stack poem on top of that when you learn it in French, but you aren't learning a new word, you're taking a word that already is assigned to another concept and trying to apply it somewhere else, while forgetting the original connection. Your brain isn't good at breaking neural connections, so you have to start thinking that you take a bite out of a car, apple, and you get in your roof, car, to drive to blue, work. This is much more difficult because your brain automatically tries to learn new things, but has no good mechanism for forgetting. Based on comments, it seems that some have experienced this with single word swaps and it has been very difficult to overcome. I'm inclined to think that this would actually break someone. Experiment deemed unnecessary. And, user 18, how children develop when occasionally microdosing LSD. And, user 19, I've actually thought a ton about this. I would put two people through the exact same conditions the entire life. Now I'm not talking just similar scenarios, but everything from the weather inside a womb to the humans they interact with to the wind every day, and I would see if they're the same. Essentially, if humans are born with personalities or if we develop them through little things all our life. Essentially the butterfly effect. TBH, this probably wouldn't even be possible with infinite money, but it would be cool. And, user 20, have an Olympics where every single athlete is drugged to an insane level. I think it would raise what is possible by today's standards drastically. And, thanks for watching. Please give a like if you enjoyed the video. Comment to tell me what you want to see more of and hit subscribe if you want to see more. See you later.